First of all, Arvind, thank you so much for being here. I think it's fantastic always to interview founders who have built businesses, but not just built unicorns, but built real businesses which are providing value. And it is phenomenal to have you here, especially in a very small audience like this, where all of them are builders. It's not a wide audience, but a very small audience. So we can have a more intimate sort of session. I'm going to spend the first 30 minutes covering a bunch of topics which we have touched upon over the last 2 days of interactions with the founders. But I'm also going to make sure that we have enough time from all of you on your questions. My first question to start with is, Arvind, did you take a Rapido to come here or not?
Yeah. I came on Rapido Auto. Depending on the distance, I choose bike versus auto versus cab. This is a bit far from my office, so I came on auto.
Okay, fair enough. So he is a customer of his own product in a big way. So I think there are 4 or 5 broad topics that we have decided to sort of focus on. But just for people who don't know Arvind already, he runs Rapido with a couple of his co-founders. We'll talk about his co-founding story. He did his engineering, then went on to Flipkart, started this whole journey around 10 years back, and we'll go through a bunch of pieces of his journey, right? Arvind, my first question to you is around your co-founders and the co-founder dynamics, right? We have met, we also interviewed Pawan before, on one of the series 2 years back. It just is phenomenal to see sort of the dynamic between the 3 of you. Now, Pawan is someone you knew for a variety of years before.
Yeah.
And your third co-founder, maybe you met only in 2013. How do you make this whole co-founder relationship work? A bunch of the folks here are, of course, working with people that they know from a past life. A bunch are working with people that they know only from last year. What are the things in the early days? How do you sort of divide up? How do you make this relationship work?
Yeah, I mean, at least if I go back, even with my founder whom I know, the Pawan whom I know from 20 years, we met, school back in 9th standard. It's exactly 20 years back in 2004. Obviously, even during IIT days, we never thought we'll start something on our own. But one thing is common between both Rishi and Pawan from a journey point of view is we spent some time before actually deciding to start by ourselves, like almost 7-8 months of just thinking, just talking, different ideas, why he liked an idea, what excites him, etc., etc. Indirectly, we were maybe behaving as if we don't know each other and then just seeing the journey of what excites both of us, right? So I think that is common even with Rishi, where we knew him in Bangalore. We met him in one of the conference and through a common friend. And then that's how we got started knowing about him. And almost for 7-8 months, we didn't say that we are considering him as a co-founder. We were just talking, again, the similar understanding of what he's going through, etc., right after college. He's just coming out of college. He's a tech guy in the college. We have seen some of the projects that he has done in the college. But Pawan and me, we are more from a business, even though Pawan is an engineering background, but he's sure that he don't want to do from an engineering point of view. So he's more excited about the business along with me, right? So I think it's more to do with knowing them, even not as a friend, but more as a professional, how he behaves. I think that 7-8 months of dating time is what helped me to know about them. But how it continued is definitely there is a huge trust and respect between especially between Pawan and me, because we know how he behaves during certain time, etc. And also with Rishi, we know what he's good at, and then we used to expect that from him, and he knows what to expect from us. So at least there is a clear expectations between us, because he takes care of tech and we take care of non-tech, right? So I think that is there, and hence it became a little bit easier. But Pawan and me, obviously we changed the roles. Initially, he used to interact with investors. Later, I changed that role to I started interacting with investors. And then initially, I used to take care of ops, and then I changed it to product. So we changed our roles over time, depending on understanding, okay, what is he good at, what I'm good at. But we were open for any of this. We said that we want to start something together, but it doesn't depend on whether we are going to do the same thing again and again, right? I mean, in initial days, you need to do everything. That is fine. But later, as we are maturing, we know that what is he good, and then he takes care of that. And what I'm good at, I'm just taking care of that right now. But initial days, kind of everyone does, because Rapido is also a pivot, right? We used to run a B2B logistics business to a B2C consumer business. So in that time, someone has to take care of sales and someone has to take care of operations in B2B. So again, there is a switch. I used to be a sales guy, and then he used to be an ops guy, and then I changed to I am an ops guy, and then he went to sales. So even there, the roles get changed, even though it's just 7 months of our operations.
I think that's I'm going to come to the question on talent in a bit. But before that, since you talked about the pivot, tell us through the journey of all the pivots you've done.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talked about today with the audience is about having some kind of vision statement that you could sell, especially to the early folks that join you, right? Did you folks have any kind of a vision? You know, it may not be a statement at the start when you started in 2014.
Yeah.
Has it remained the same? Has it changed? Was it even there? And just walk us through some of the pivots and why did you even go through with those?
Yeah, I mean, maybe definitely when we are starting Rapido, when we are pivoting, we had a lot more clarity on what we want to do. But when we started in 2014, a startup of where aggregating trucks, that was how we started. But even before starting that, was the way of how we entered into even the idea of carrier back then is not that we have seen some problem statement. So maybe very similar to maybe what you guys have gone through, where we just want to start something and then we came out of our jobs. We didn't had any idea. We went through our own 3-month program where Pawan and me and Rishi, where we were like listing down all the ideas on the board. We listed down almost 80, 85 ideas, and then we had to choose. We had to first shortlist to 3 or 4, and then we took somewhere founder market fit. We knew that name, but we said, okay, this I don't want to do, or I don't want to be associated with these kind of ideas, or maybe we are not good at something which requires as a core for that kind of an idea, right? So in that we have shortlisted and we came to 2 or 3 ideas, and then finally some ground research to say, okay, maybe this is something it's worth doing it. So we didn't have any statement. We have just seen that, okay, this problem statements make sense and there is some problem, let's go into it. But the reason of why we pivoted is once we went deep into that idea, we realized it is not such a big idea that we want to spend next 10 years of our life. So we were pretty clear that when we started Carrier or our startup, even before Carrier, there were different ideas. We were looking for almost 6 months. So for Pawan, it's like 3-4 pivots. For me, it is like 2 pivots. But but we were sure that this is an idea where it will not become so big for us that it will justify our 10 years of our life. So somewhere that, and then we came to know that, okay, we are not a B2B founders. We don't maybe enjoy that sales cycle. If the impact is not seen immediately, maybe that dopamine hit is not there. So somewhere we realized we are a B2C guys. And then we said, okay, next idea has to be B2C. At least that clarity was pretty clear. Because again, founder market fit, we said there has to be some ops because 2 of the founders out of 3 are not super high in engineering. We understand product, but it's not that we are understanding core deep tech. So we said, okay, it should not be tech should be an enabler, but how can we have our strength out of in the 3 founders, 2 founders' strength to be the core of the company. And hence we were again looking at somewhere into ops led, somewhere into product, making it easy for operations as an ideas again. But this time very clear we have that we want to start B2C. Okay. And in B2C, because we have some ambitions that it has to be big. So the idea was it has to be big. If it is small, again, we were not interested. So the ideas that we chose is people who are facing the problem every day. So that's the only filter that we had, that it has to be everyday problem. And hence, again, the ideas that came in, and then somewhere we were super excited just by just by getting an idea of Rapido. I mean, sometimes you feel that once you hear that idea, you feel like, okay, it has to work. You'll forget about, you'll not go deep into why it didn't work till now, why someone didn't even launch, nothing like that. But it's like, it has to work, or if it works, it will be cool. Right? That's the only thing that you get feel of some ideas, and then that's how Rapido came.
And what was that first idea that you started Rapido with?
Yeah, I mean, it is like everyday problem. Back then, obviously, both our competitors were on their high. So we were like, maybe this will work just because it's working in a 4-wheeler, so it has to work on 2-wheeler. And somewhere we were super excited, and that's the one thing that is constant even now, that when we heard about when we got an idea of 2-wheeler taxis, we said that 2-wheeler taxi drivers has to be a part-time drivers. So that is one thing which is pretty constant till now, that a lot of people who work with us as our captains on 2-wheeler, majority of them are part-timers. They work less than 3 hours every day. So there are college students who work with us. There are like school teachers who work with us. Like anyone who's making 25,000 rupees in their life, they work 3-4 hours to make 5-6,000. So that somewhere we have seen that in US it happens. Why is it not happening in India? And if that happens, then maybe it's a very huge impact. So the big thing about the startup journey that we had, irrespective of the previous idea or Rapido or whatever we do post this, is it has to be somewhere in impact. So that is one thing we are pretty sure and pretty common, and hence B2B, SaaS tools, some analytics tool, none of these are in our shortlist, just because we know the impact should be on the people, and if it is on the people, maybe we are a lot more aligned to that. We come from that kind of background, not from high class. So somewhere we see that, okay, if I do this, something will change and then things will be good for the society and all. So impact is a big filter. So impact plus job creation plus everyday problem. Everything made it so obvious that, okay, we have to do it.
And one of my questions, which I will not ask, was why do you take on something which is so operationally intensive? But now we understand why you actually very deliberately took that.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you said, there were two very heavily funded competitors right at that time. And while they may not have had an active bike taxi play, you were going to take on, literally an oligopoly of sorts. With almost zero funding at that point in time. And these guys, even in that time frame, were very heavily funded.
Yeah.
Two, you're going to take on government regulations and city-based regulations. And everyone at that point in time, at least, didn't want bike taxis or anything of that sort. Safety, blah, 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 all the concerns. So many different challenges in addition to being operationally intensive. How do you enter a market like that with, you were very young founders. It's not like you had some major networks or big wins and stuff. What is the thought process of that?
Yeah, just before answering that, so if you take any of the SaaS company in a similar size of revenue or fraction of our revenue, our team size is smaller than the SaaS companies. Even though you think we are an ops intensive company, like we are less than 600, 650 people in the entire org running in 100 cities, now almost 200 cities, right? So yeah, maybe that's a different story. But see, I think from competition and regulations, right? I think when we started, one of the advantage of starting early is that you don't think a lot. Don't think about competition, what will happen if I die, right? Because you don't have a lot to lose, right? So I think that is one big advantage, that you don't think so logically. You just say that, okay, I think it has to work, right? But once you actually go and sit in front of investors, then you will start realizing that, okay, it's not that easy like you thought, right?
Listen, guys.
And we are coming from Pivot, right? So ideally, we would have known all that, right? Fundraising is not easy, all that. When I started Career, I thought you start something, people will come and fund you, right? You don't need to do anything, right? But we have gone through that. It's not easy to raise money. But still, when we were pivoting, at least the big advantage is when we were pivoting, we had like 60 lakhs in the bank, right? Because we raised money from the previous company. So, but you were starting a B2C company with 60 lakh. And we know that in 3-4 months, if I don't prove anything, then I'm gone. So we had a 3-month, 60 lakh B2C company. The problem is the same month of we started, Ola raised $1 billion, $1 billion in the same month, right? And Uber globally raised 10 billion, both from the same investors, right? So that's when and then we sold to all the investors saying that they will not start bike taxi, it is different, all those things. And before the money came into the account, both of them started bike taxi, right? So then we were like, okay, then whoever believed in us, the good thing is, maybe they didn't take that statement so seriously. They already accounted that they will start bike taxi, right? So investors have already done that. But one thing that we have seen post 1 month after we launch is after 15-20 days, we started facing some other regulatory hurdle in the bike taxi, and both of them shut down within 15 days after launching. That's when we realized that the power of if we don't give up, then that is going to be our differentiator. Because first problem they faced for any large companies in this vertical, the first thing they do is they just shut down. It's just because they have a lot of things to do in the core business as well, right? So I think that is one thing that we realized, that a larger company doing smaller things or seemed like a smaller thing for them back then, no need to think a lot about the competition. So that is the big part of what we realized, saying that, okay, competition is not a big thing that we need to worry. And one other thing that we know internally back then, very few investors thought actually seen that way, is they were not that big. the competition, the number of orders that they were doing, the kind of penetration they had, it's not that big. It's just that they raised a lot. So consumer traction is not big. It's just a noise that's big outside. So actual consumers are not such a large numbers, right? So I think so somewhere we knew that okay, not a lot of people are using, so let's not worry about the competition a lot. But in 3 months, you need to prove something so that you can raise the next round. Which is that is something that we had. Without knowing what is needed, one thing about Rapido is always we chase for growth, irrespective of what investors are looking at, whether investors are looking at maybe some kind of product, some kind of differentiation, some kind of profitability. We didn't worry about anything. We said that if there is a growth, and in our case, the number is number of orders per day. If there is this number keeps moving, then investors will come. Somewhere we knew that investors will always back growth. I think that was pretty obvious, especially in the early days. So we just keep on chasing growth. And one good part of the pivot journey and also my experience being a business finance guy is we are always capital efficient. So frugality is always there. We are always capital efficient compared to anyone else out there. So that core is taken care of. So the next thing is how do you keep on growing? And that's where there are some things that we did differently in terms of launching in small area and then expanding into a smaller city. So there are some things where we knew that we had to, when we are going and telling to investors about, okay, we are this, but very similar to that company, we had to have some differentiation back then also. And then we said, okay, tier 2 is our differentiator. So somewhere we thought maybe people will buy this. And then we launched tier 2 city first, then launching any tier 1 city, post the tier 1, right? And back then, the competition used to be pretty small in tier 2 cities. Hardly people used to use cab there, right? So somewhere we had that early traction in tier 2 that actually changed the course of the next round as well. But that having the timeline of 3 months, I need to go somewhere until 45 days, we didn't talk to any investors because we were like, what will you talk when you just launched for 30 days, right? So we said 45 days, let's just do what from a product side, let's launch first 100 rides, 200 rides. And then that's when we went out when we did 200 rides and we got money by the time we did 500 rides within 40 days. So I think that's the maybe...
I think there's I don't think we could have said it better. Literally everything in the morning that we said around, it felt like the best reiteration of, I think, what we have been pushing, which is really one hero metric. Growth, just focus on growth. And I mean, he talked that he had 60 lakhs, 3 months, like literally you have 2 crores at the minimum, right? So you have a lot more money and inflationary hopefully. But I think just a variety of things he has said, which is all so true, which is at the end of the day, at these scales, frugality is embedded because some of you, are very strong on that aspect. But I think it's just phenomenal to just hear those as the starting point, right? So when you were scaling up, and what is sort of how do you look at this whole thing around, let's say, when do you put in place a system or not, or a process or not? Because 100 is still a big enough number. 1,000 becomes a humongous number. So how do you look at in some of the questions here around, you have the particular set of capital, that growth is sort of something that you're looking at. What are the product features to prioritize? Should it be more customer focused? Should it be more back-end focused? Any thought process there early days?
Early days, definitely no process, definitely no systems. When we started scaling, that's when first for example, in our case, when we launched initially, we used to have call center for every city. When we launched like Mysore, we had like 3 people sitting in Mysore, attending only Mysore calls, and then Bangalore, and then Vijayawada. And then when we decided that this is after our pre-series A kind of thing, where we said, okay, we need to scale. That's when we said, okay, let's centralize our operations and then scale because it's not scalable. But till then, we didn't, and the driver payouts that we used to do back then also used to happen like city level. City level, there is a finance guy doing for city, right? So frugality is there, but that doesn't mean that we have said that first everything be perfect and then only launch it, right? So I think systems definitely no. Definitely, in initial days, I think the prioritization should be a lot easier because you just launch what is core as a product. We don't launch something which is looking good. You don't launch something saying that which is good to have. You'll just launch must have, right? So when you are just launching must haves, the advantage is you're not thinking a lot about the beautification about the product, just because people are coming it. People are the good thing is the early days, at least back then, people were not expecting a product which is super seamless, right? People know that this is a startup. They're okay with some kind of experience because they know that this is a very early stage, right? So I think that advantage will always be there, and hence it has to be a must-have products. And I don't think it doesn't need to be automated. It doesn't need to be system-led. It can be manual, etc., etc. So I think if you just ask me from a systems versus consumer side, like just must have, and definitely no process, definitely no systems, if possible. I mean, I remember Carrier for almost 2-3 months. We just ran on WhatsApp, Google Forms, calling. We used to save the number, and then when someone calls, so it's not a CRM that you have. It just we used to save the number, the order for today, and then etc. etc. Right. So a lot of non-scalable way for the at least initial 6 months.
And I think that's the key, right? I think it's less about no tech. It's just about non-scalable tech is also fine.
Yeah.
I have 2-3 questions, and I'm going to quickly run through them before, I want to keep 20-25 minutes for Q&A here. The aspect of people, early people, and what did you look for in those early people? Has any of your early people stayed on for the course of time in terms of have they been able to scale up through this journey? Yeah. And what did you look for in those people, and what did you compromise on?
Yeah. I mean, so at least one thing with Rapido is generally people don't leave. If people are leaving, then people are leaving to start on their own. So I think that is something that we have seen from the early days. But what worked for majority of our early employees, which who stayed long, etc., etc. One common trait is ambition. Like people have that ambition that I have to do something, and I'm coming here to prove something to the world. Right? A lot of our leaders right now, I would say majority of the leaders, even who are lateral hires as well. That means they're not from day zero, but whom we hired 4 years back, 3 years back, 2 years back. One big thing is everyone had something to prove because they, in the previous organization, they didn't have that opportunity, right? So I think that is somehow that worked, that common trait worked. And some point of time, they either have started or they have seen the early days of some startup, and then again, maybe because it didn't work out, they went to some corporate, right? So that want to start something, but I know I can't start, so I want to be a part of some journey, right? So I think that is a generally, especially in the early days, because you don't need super high functional depth, at least in the first 1 year. So that worked, where just ambition plus they are good at something, which is something that you need. But advantage with maybe because of I worked for a couple of years, and then maybe the college, because we come from IIT, is just you have some other friend who knows someone who want to start but they couldn't start. So somewhere all the early employees happen to for us is like college juniors, like who started maybe someone who is with us in our sports club, or a lot of these things where we have seen somehow, or some of my close friend knows them, and then they brought it to us. So that's how the early 10 people. But like my product guy, he's there for 6 years. One of the tech. So there are some people whom we chased in the early days that we want him, but we couldn't be able to convert for maybe some other reason because of financial or etc. etc. But after 2 years, again, they still came, right? Just because they somehow believed in us. It's just the timing was not right. So if we like someone, we used to keep chasing them, and then at some point, they used to convert as well.
I think that's the other thing, right? For all the people who you think are expensive today, will be great hires in 2 years, right? You just have to excite them continuously, and let's assume you have a 10-year journey like Rapido. Yeah. Last 2 questions before I get to the audience. How do you, everyone talks customer obsession. Everyone sort of assumes today that that's part of the first values of the company. How do you embed that, you as founders as well as early team members?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, I think it should be and it should be a lot easier because it's a very small team. Everyone sees what the other people, what the others are doing, because you sit here literally in one table and work. So you keep asking that question to team members regarding the customer. Who told you that this will work? Who told you that his like customer is thinking like that, right? So that is one way. But obviously in the late stage, what it becomes is your action. People see your action. Like even now, we have few autos and few cabs parked in our office. Anyone can take for 2-3 hours and then just a ride and then come and talk to consumers while you are on the ride, right? And every month, every employee, either as a customer or as a captain, does at least 10 rides, right? So it is very first hand as experience, because one thing, over the course of time, the products that we have built, a lot of products even now that we build comes from the ground, and we are very high believers that that is going to be our differentiator, that we will be very close to the ground. As the company becomes big, what we have realized is the leadership will not be close to the ground, and then maybe some APM or someone gets close to the ground, and you are trying to make them feel the customer pain, and then that translate to some product. Not every time that converts, because what founder sees and what a leader sees, generally he thinks bit at least 2 steps ahead than maybe someone at ground level, right? I think some of these things where you doing that action and then you actually asking those questions about the consumer is something that worked for us. The good thing is, irrespective of the scale, we didn't give up on that. We still continue that practices.
And the last but not the least, grit, right? I mean, one of the things in a business like this is you have 1.5 million, 2 million every day. Something is going to burn somewhere. Someone is going to be unhappy with something. Even at a small scale and a bigger scale, you have some event like COVID, right? And you guys would have been one of the industries that's most hit. How do you wade through these kind of times? What's your own mental model as a founder? And how do you sort of pass that through others?
Yeah, one correction, like we do 3 million rides every day. So
they're growing too fast. You can't even keep track of it.
Yeah. So I think definitely that is one thing. One is grit on just giving up as an idea. Like that, I think is any company that has been for 10 years, you ask them that there will be at least 3-4 near-death experiences. Definitely the journey is not always high. At least you'll see 2-3 years of constant high, but there will be 1 year they will go through, irrespective of how large the company is. So not giving up is a common trait you see for any company that is for 10 years, that is for sure. But what there is something on a physical product like us, like consumers and captains are meeting each other. The product itself is where there is an angle of safety, there is an angle of experience. Definitely a lot of things goes wrong. And especially when you're doing 3 million rides, the probability, even if you take 1 by 10 power 6 or 1 in million, something will happen, right? So I think first one or two major incidents that happened definitely got into our head a lot. We couldn't able to sleep for long. Like, why did we even start? Is it the reason why we started? Someone has to go through this because of you. So I think somewhere we understood after going through that maybe this will happen. We need to just make sure that the same thing will not happen again and again. So I think, but it's more to do with accepting that once you are in it, these things will happen. It's just that how do you treat that during that time, right? For example, I still remember like there was one major incident that happened in Mysore within 2 months after we launched. So we had to go literally go to the consumers, parents, and everything just to make sure that the accident that the consumer has to go through, saying that I mean, they have seen that the founders coming from Bangalore, the management team or leaders coming from Bangalore, just to make sure that they are telling them that it's something it's nothing intentional, and that incident that happened, the accident that happened, is more to do with we can't explain logics there. We can't say कि million make ride ऐसा होगा, etc., etc. But we just showed the sympathy, saying that sorry, we didn't knew that this has to happen, but we'll make sure that none of the other customers face through it. So they have seen that genuineness from us. And then slowly we understood that if this can be shown by others, and hence even if now, for example, if you take the female customers as one of the major category that where we know we have to unlock, like any bad rating that the female customer gives, that we immediately call and then tell them, ask them for the challenge, what happened. We call the captain, we call the customer. So some of these things just continued, irrespective of the leaders or the founders were there. It's just because they have seen us doing that when something was there at the small scale, and then that continued, right? So even now, a lot of management and leadership team get involved for any instant directly by talking to the customer if something is major. We don't leave it completely to the customer support as such, right? So I think some of these practices, and definitely going through it only, but having that belief that definitely you should not repeat this, but you have to move ahead because you are in a category, you are in an industry where things can go wrong, especially on drone.
Fair. Okay. On that note, folks, raise your hands and please shoot your questions.
What is the best way to find your target audience that is efficient from a CAC perspective and also gets you through the initial hurdles, like you said, and then you can scale it, once you've reached some sort of mass that you can show to the investor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think if some investor is asking you CAC when you had the first 5-10 orders, then I think something is wrong. I don't think you can show the CAC metrics in the first few orders that you do. But I think they're asking in terms of how do you, maybe what is your GTM, just to do with less money, how can you do more. But what are you doing there will definitely will not be the long-term solution. But I think the relevant definitely question is like, how do you find the relevant TG and market for the TG, right? I think that is the definitely the question. So I think at least, again, we are fortunate because the problem that we solve is a so utility product that everyone needs it. So we just need to go on the ground, who are using buses, ask them, boss, you're using buses, you can save money, save time, why not use something like this, right? So we used to go outside offices, used to go just near the bus stops, right? So if I draw the parallels that what are people using right now for the alternative that they have, right? For example, if you're doing something for a fintech product or let's say maybe, I don't know, stockbroking, but let's say you're doing something, what is an alternative right now? If it is a physical world, then it's like great. You will find them in a small crowd. Maybe if you are doing maybe a fitness, you know where they are. Someone, let's say a women, generally where they are, what do they do. So I think at least now in the initial days, because the first 100, 500 customers generally will also give you some view on how your PMF is, how the word of mouth is. For example, when we did our initial, for the first 20 days of our launch, almost every day we used to be our captains and then do at least 2-3 rides. And we used to ask them like, how did they come to know about us, right? One thing that we realized is, okay, someone has maybe posted on back then Facebook, someone in their office group, someone told them about that. And then we slowly used that as a hack, saying that we used to go to every offices and ask someone to say, ki, all at the rate of flipkart.com, all at the rate of rapido.bike, and then just tell about this product, right? We used to convince one guy to just post it, right? So some of the things that work in the initial customers, you can make it as a first hack to get the next 10, 20, 50 customers. But it has to be unscalable way, and hence the CAC metrics is not relevant. It's just that you need to have a mental math saying that what CAC is justifiable, right? Now, for example, right now CAC is less than 10 rupees, right? But we would have never acquired someone at 10 rupees back then, right? But as a consumer internet company, 10 rupees even now, is it even justifiable? Should it go to less than 5 rupees? Maybe it has to in the over time, right? So I think, more than CAC, it's more about how do you understand the initial customers and then just market. Even in the offline world, it's a lot easier because you just go to alternative place. In online world, I think there will be something or other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Such a great utility, time saving, cost saving. You're traveling by yourself, then why you need a car, right?
Yeah.
And India being the mindset of frugality, and why spend so much if it's not required. Yet you brought in Ranveer Singh at some point in time. Yeah. What was the reason, and how did it help you?
Yeah, so I think when we are scaling, one thing that we knew is bike taxi as a concept. So in one of the cities that we launched, I think Coimbatore or some city, we just put a poster saying that bike taxi available in your city or something like that. When we asked people like what did they understand by seeing that poster, they said the company name is Bike and we launched a taxi company. Right? So because the concept of bike taxi, even though it is so obvious, it is not there in India. Right? So that's when we realized that we need to explain them visually as well, not just by writing. So we decided, okay, we have to go video heavy because we need to explain them what bike taxi means. A lot of people used to think, even when you say bike taxi, they used to think bike rental, that they have to drive by themselves. So it was not so obvious. Now, just because it's been at least 7-8 years, it's obvious to think what bike taxi means. But when we started, it was not the case. So when we used Ranveer Singh or Allu Arjun back then, it's more of, again, it's an experiment that we want to see that is that the best outcome that we can get compared to a normal ad. But the first time that we did itself, we went with celebrities. It definitely worked. It's also because we are low penetrated, and then Ranveer in the north, Allu Arjun in the south. It's before even Pushpa came in. So, but it worked for us in a great way. It's just because we want people to know. If you see the ad, also there's nothing in that ad. They just say what is bike taxi. There is nothing visually. They stand and then talk about the concept, right? It's just that sometimes if they say, people understand it, and also credibility comes. And after that, the next 2-3 years, we never used again celebrities. We went with normal.
Works with a lot of money you raise, and also a lot of money ready for not the star, but the media spend more than anything else. You know this a lot. Yeah.
So my question is around when you started, you have taken the first one. Your first company, your product was completely novice. It was not known. Awareness was zero. You were creating a category. So how did you go about actually waking people up? One, obviously, you talked about the physical world. How much of that you have converted? What digital channels you use? And how much of that, what different mediums you have?
Yeah, back then, the good thing is there are no lot of mediums. I'm talking about 2014, 2015. It's just Facebook. So in a digital world, we used to use Facebook and used to collect some numbers from OLX and then just message them because the numbers are so visible outside back then. So we did that, but major channel is back then Facebook. Obviously now it's a mix of Meta, YouTube, everything, but and then email marketing to alumni. So one thing that we realized is because the concept is new, we want someone, at least back then the early adopters we thought is someone who is a bit educated, they're okay to do. So we used to go to all alumni groups for IIMs, IITs, all MBA colleges and say that just drop your mail. So that's something that helped for initial customers, initial employees, initial investors. The same hack worked for all the three. So yeah, in that way, but it's heavily, but 50 back then also we used to spend on just Facebook and digital way and then hacky ways of getting the word spread.
Yeah.
So on the supply side, right, since you said your competitors were heavily funded and it was a new kind of a space you were entering.
Yeah.
So on both two-wheelers and four-wheelers, what were the kind of supply side challenges you faced and what did you do to become the preferred partner?
Yeah, so back then when we launched in 2015, it used to be in hyperlocal era. Like a lot of companies, hyperlocal laundry, hyperlocal food, hyperlocal grocery, all that used to come. So a lot of people were on bikes, thinking of delivery, etc. But everyone is at small scale companies. So, but what we have gone through is we didn't go after existing delivery boys because we knew that it's going to be a fight. I'm not just fighting with my competitors, I'm fighting with an indirect competition to come as a taxi drivers, right? But what we went after is we just went after saying that it's a part-time job. It's a part-time job. You can work for 1 hour and then make money. You can work for 2 hours and make money. So what it created is we created with a unique supply. Even though competition was throwing money, they were throwing money on a full-time driver. But we went after that part-time captain saying that this is going to be a different supply. But for us, it was not about differentiation. It's like we know it's going to be a low-cost supply. The full-timers expect a different money, a part-timers expect different money, and part-timers no one is grabbing because of the incentives, etc. So we went after a part-time supply and started marketing as a part-time job than as a delivery job. So that is something we went differently, and hence the supply, even to the day, our supply is like 75% of, especially a bike supply, don't work with competition because we build products around the part-time supply compared to a full-time supply. Four-wheel is completely different story. Four-wheeler we launched 10 months back. So we launched with an existing product, we launched with existing customers. So we went with a completely different business model. We said that no commission and then just subscription fees. So driver pays us 35 rupees per day. And then he has access to the platform. So it's a low commission play that we are going with four-wheeler. So it's different, but we are going after same and similar supply, but predominantly with a different business model.
Thank you for a very inspiring story and come from your industry. I understand the pain, the kaba paddy, one to the last 10 on years. So, I have a quick question. When after your transition from career, after your pivot career to Rapido, and while with limited resources, fighting against the conscious of the industry, uh, given that time when you had to create this also as a new category, you would have spent a lot of the supply side of it, OEM side, captain side, a lot of side maintenance side, the impact captains, me end, etc. If that time you had $1 million, what would you, how would you be spending it against tech and ops? Because at that time, I'm sure that it must be ops scary.
Yeah.
When you had started, it was that wasn't the most best product that I can ever have. Right? Yeah. So how would you had spent that $1 million distinguished between tech and ops?
Yeah, I mean, so one thing that we knew back then was in a two-sided marketplace, one thing you need to keep it constant, especially in the early days. And hence it was supply. So we spend all our money on supply in an obvious way of giving incentives and or giving them minimum guarantees and ask them to be on the platform and wait for the orders to come, right? So that is, I think I will still spend in a similar way. But if you look at when we started, there are at least 2-3 companies who also raised same or more than us. Like when we raised like 5-6 crores as the first round in Rapido, there's a company who raised 10 crores, there's another company who raised 4 crores. But the mistake they have done is they said, with this 10 crores, I will spend to get the next round within 4-5 months. So they went with spending all the 10 crores within 4 months and then not able to raise money, right? So that is and we also did the same. We also spent on supply itself, but the way we spend on supply, as I said, we spend on part-time supply, which requires less capital compared to what the competition used to do is like hire them as an employee, give them like full-time, give them 25,000-30,000 rupees per month, and then make them stay. Instead of that, we said, okay, come for 2 hours, I'll give you 50, like back then 60 rupees per hour. So we used to say at 100-120 rupees, you just stay, right? Compared to promising them like 30,000 rupees per month, right? So it's the same thing, but maybe in one way we did capital efficiently than them, right? So sometimes when you have more money, things become tough. It's just because you do.
What was the proposal spending, tech development, and then creating this plan?
Yeah, so tech development is again 2.5 developers, right? Back then, obviously. AWS and everything they give free, right? Given you're the first 6 months, but the cost is like 2-3 developers, right? Maybe we used to give them back then 40,000 rupees per month. Yeah, so not a lot if you look at from a spend point of view. So your entire money is going to the business than building something. Obviously, until the product is launched, until the tech consumer side product is launched, we didn't obviously spend money. So, but we had the timeline of. From the time we decided that we want to launch Rapido to actually launching is 25 days. September 15th, we decided to pivot. October 5th, we launched Rapido app. We didn't have an idea on September 15th. We didn't have a name. We didn't have a logo. We didn't have an app, both the sides. But 20 days, we just launched it. Right. So.
And we should do that.
Carrier. I mean, he was there in the previous idea itself, right? So, yeah.
How do you build culture early on and define culture in the organization? That you said that a lot of people came to you with ambition. Yeah, like those are the kind of people. How do you fight them and ensure that they continue that way?
Yeah. So how do we identify is definitely spending more time. So there are no interviews in the early days, right? Because either through a common connect, that is one thing that worked, or it firsthand. You started spending more time on why they want to do, how long they can actually. I mean, all the questions are related to life is not going to be easy. Still, do you want to come? Right? Do you want to give up within 1 year? What is your maybe a financial commitment for next 18 months or 6 months? So he or she also understood that what I'm saying is more to do with are they signing up for the tough life for the next 1 year or next 18 months, right? So I think that is pretty common between everyone. And especially for us, the culture is we were pretty transparent on what is happening with what our investors saying and why we are pivoting, for example. Because a lot of people, they joined for career and within 45 days, we pivoted to Rapido. right? But they still continued with Rapido, etc., right? Because they just have seen what we said, saying that we wanted to launch something big, and hence we started. We don't want to settle small. We don't want to give up. So the reason of why you start is what they will connect a lot of time. Just like how VCs invest in the founders, even the early employees, a lot of them come because of the founder and why he started and how true he is staying to the reason of why he started, right? I think, and the more and more, especially someone spends 5 6 months with you, they will see how you are actually behaving, and they will literally judge you on how you are behaving in different times. When you get money, how you are behaving. When you don't have money, how you are behaving. Why did you start? How is it changing as things change, right? Because once you get money, once you become Series A, Series B, a lot of people change because something else get influenced. You see, you get some FOMO, you do something else. But if you're staying true to that, that's where the culture just goes down, right? So recently, like 2 months back, we did one exercise. Again, we're a 10-year-old company. We still don't have a vision statement. We don't have a mission statement kind of thing. We know why we exist. We are here to create whatever impact, etc. is a reason why we exist. So we called all our leadership on L-1, so which is like, let's say, a 45-member team. And we made them to 10 different teams. And we said that, okay, how do you see Rapido in the next 10 years? If you have to write the mission statement, what will you write it? 95% of them wrote the same statement, right? So we didn't say that, we didn't put it on the road, we didn't say that just because we behaved it, we kept saying that what impacts us and how we behave. When we raised money, when we became unicorn, we never celebrated. So they know, okay, these guys are not for this. These guys are for this, right? So I think that, so I want to make culture just builds up over time, and the things that you do. And if you're actually doing the same thing, then that's the culture. And definitely in the initial days, very highly skewed to what founder does. Yeah, if ideally founder is not changing, the culture will not change to the reason of why he started.
Last 2 questions, folks. Yes.
Yeah. So in Insight, we understand that few things that definitely worked was going into tier 2 cities and not having like managed marketplace sort of stuff. I mean, was these choices out of compulsion because they were competitors and this was the only thing that made sense with whatever money that you had at that point in time? Or was it a deliberate thing? Because in terms of like our company, right, the managed marketplace model worked way better than, I mean, and there is, I think, no right way to know until and unless it has worked.
Yeah.
So how did like that sort of?
Yeah, one definitely constraints gave us that opportunity because we were constrained from capital, constrained from competition. Definitely, that's the reason of why we went and launched tier 2. But just after raising capital, we stopped tier 2. We only launched tier 1. Right. So, I mean, we know why we have started. And if we would have gone so deep into tier 2 also, maybe the journey would have been a bit different. Maybe Rapido would have been different. Cabs we would have never launched. Auto we would have never launched because tier 2, tier 3 solutions might be different, etc. Again, for whatever reasons we took that call back then is like we want to show that there are some customers who are still not on Ola and Uber. That's what we wanted to show. And we said obvious things is tier 2, tier 3. But even in city like Bangalore, there are people who don't use this, right? Maybe there are students, there are people who make like grey collar, who make like 40,000-50,000 rupees per month. So that is something maybe it's very difficult to show in a tier 1 city. One of the other reasons where it became very difficult for us to raise money is none of the VCs are our target customers. They didn't understand what we are building. They never used, I remember talking to European investors and US investors, they never sat on a bike. I asked someone to sit on a bike, he couldn't sit. It's just because they're not used to that, right? So I think that is one of the things where at least I realized that they couldn't be able to relate it, what I'm saying. Even now, tier 2, tier 3, when I don't know if you invest in agri-tech, like if someone says about agriculture, how can a VC understand about agriculture, right? Even I don't understand, even I come from village.
So we right from Antler, and we had like 35, 40 meetings with other investors. Only one who talked to the customer was it.
Yeah, exactly right. So I mean, there are some things where unfortunately some things become difficult just because the VC that you're talking about is also not your target customers, is not able to relate it. They understand cab, they're like, okay, when there is a cab, I will use auto, right? All right, but
the need for the product is not easily understandable to different kinds of the consumer.
Why pinch the tigers of 4-wheelers now?
Yeah.
Isn't there a risk for the perception that you created in terms of reality, economy, etc.?
Yeah.
How easy was it to get into a 4-wheeler cab service now? And why would you get there?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, actual reason maybe I can't talk here, but definitely it's more to do with from a consumer side. What we have seen Auto has done is the same consumers started using different services for different needs. The same two-wheeler customers is also using a three-wheeler. The same three-wheeler users is actually also using the four-wheeler. So for three-wheeler, they're coming to us. For four-wheeler, they're coming to our competitions. So it's always a risk that the same consumer for different needs, very similar use case, they're using different things. So that is the thing which we accelerated. But timing, the three-wheeler launch and four-wheeler launch, the same thing happened for the three-wheeler also when we launched during COVID. That during COVID, why will you launch a new category of three-wheeler when the entire world is dying, right? So I think back then again, the reason was different. Existence was the reason that, okay, we have to exist. The team is sitting idle. There is no business. We have to do something. That's how three-wheeler came in actually during COVID. We launched during COVID the three-wheeler. But four-wheeler, we were pretty clear on why we started. Because we had all the tech, we had everything. So four-wheeler is a business, is the fastest profitable business. Within 2 months after launch, it became profitable. And it's a kind of a money-making business. So we continued. And then we went with a model of disruptive model with no commissions compared to the competition charging high commission. So it's a clear need. One other clear need is even though the four-wheelers were there from last 10 to 12 years, but the consumer's pain point is still there. Like they're not getting a ride, the cancellations are there, the prices are like only going up, but the drivers were not happy. The both sides of marketplace not being happy is the best thing that can happen for the player like us to come and take away the opportunity. And in a lot of markets, we already are number one in caps. And it's a 10-month-old category for us.
Last question from someone who has not asked. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Do you ever think about regulations? So basically, like two-wheeler taxis are bikes owned by individuals. Yeah, right. So maybe recently there was a ban in Karnataka for the taxi. So have you ever thought about that? How would you have maneuvered this if it was ever?
Yeah, definitely in early days, we thought first PMF and then next regulations. With the initial days, we thought if the consumers and captains are loving it, it's our job to actually make the regulations happen. Because whenever the regulations was not there, the challenge is no one has actually asked for it, no one has actually fought for it. That's the reason regulations didn't exist. No regulation, all the regulations that you see right now didn't exist 50 years back. Someone came and actually changed and brought those regulations. So we knew that in bike taxi, we have to bring it. Obviously, we had some confidence because the model already exists in Goa. So it's not that regulators don't know about this concept. It's just that it was not available in other states. So we have to go and make it happen. So, and hence we know that, okay, because there is a state or a city which is already operating, and obviously globally, like Indonesia moves on two-wheeler taxi, Africa moves on two-wheeler taxi. So that was already there. So that means globally it exists as a concept. Some state it already exists. So that means other states didn't just bring it up or no one asked for it. So we have to keep fighting for the policy to come in. So we initially focused on, okay, there might be policy challenge, but if the PMF is there, if the consumers and drivers are loving it, then especially our category is such a way that you're creating employment from a driver's side, you are creating an alternative which is cheaper from the consumer side, both sides love it, and then they can come along with us to regulators to actually get the policy happen. And that's how we were able to change the policy in the two-wheeler taxis.
Okay, on that note, given this has been a phenomenal session and it's so fantastic that without planting other than 2-3 questions that I thought I'll ask, that he's actually said everything in terms of what we have sort of reiterated through the morning. I think it's fantastic. But Aravind, thank you once again for being with us. And I think it's phenomenal the impact you guys are creating at Rapido, and to move from 3 million to 30 million rides and, become a decocon. I know that's probably not as important, but still do that. Congratulations and best wishes. And folks, thanks again to Aravind.